Market news, of course, setting out as well for the week. Some interesting things have certainly been coming to the fore. So let's unpack that market movement, the economic data, and everything in between. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital joins us in studio this afternoon. Warwick, thank you so much for the time. I always appreciate it here on a Friday. 0.2% up, the general sentiment there from the JSE today, firmly above that 59,000 point mark. Sustainability, I suppose, around that is going to be the question. Perhaps now investors seeking to get in, do they stay in?
Well, I guess there's a few moving parts there. I think normally we would have said the President Sona speech would have been the driver, but actually I think it's the movement in that gold price that I think has been of such interest to us. I mean, I think it predominantly accounts for that massive move in the rand. I mean, that was a huge jump that we saw in the past couple of days in the rand there. And I mean, the jump in the gold price is enormous. I mean, it's quite some time since we've seen a move like that.
Yeah, and I mean, now headed towards that 1,400 mark, right? And the difference between the platinum price and the gold price now headed towards that $600 mark.
$600.
We were talking about 500 not so long ago.
Yeah, that's
how
right.
significant and how important is it that that gap widens? And what does it actually mean for markets?
Well, what it certainly points to is a fairly precautionary environment from a political point of view. I mean, you know, gold is the dog that barks in the corner when something is wrong. And in this case, well, obviously it's severe stresses around trade and around potential boxing matches in the Middle East. And justifiably, the market doesn't like either.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the big stories, of course, this week, the Fed chair announcing to, of course, keep interest rates unchanged, which wasn't the big market mover. The market mover was the fact that they said that they're looking to perhaps be a more accommodative in future. How does that shift things and tilt things along, you think, in terms of a ripple effect for the rest of the world?
They're definitely teeing up a rate cut. I mean, it's pretty much getting priced in already. That a rate cut in July seems almost a dead cert at this stage. The Fed indicated the neutral interest rate position has fallen from 2.8 to 2.5, which means that there's effectively room there for a cut already. So, I mean, part of the key question is trade talks, that they're now saying, well, notwithstanding the fact that we have a consumer that's in good health in the States, you've got good unemployment data, but the potential for trade stresses to continue means that actually there is need for rate cuts to shore up the economy. Yeah. So if in turn we actually had a successful trade talk resolution, you may very well suddenly see rate cuts off the table again.
How many rate cuts though?
Well, at this stage just one, but I don't think that would be the end of the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we head back home, yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa outlining perhaps the things he'd like to get done, a few bold, a few audacious, a few perhaps the market not necessarily liking some others. What are your thoughts in general?
I think a little bit of too much protest out there. I mean, for example, one complaint was that it's long on big ideas and actually short on execution. Well, I think he was just trying to put a little bit of hope, I think, at the end of the squalid current reality. Certainly a lot of work needed at Eskom. There was no mincing of the words there. They pointed to the fact that actually now is the time for action, and certain actions are going to have to be taken that will not be popular. Yeah. He clarified the status of SABC. That's very important both globally and locally. On the land question, he pointed out that, in fact, government has a substantial package of land at its disposal to make available for redistribution and assistance of emerging markets. I believe that something like 3,800 farms are sitting on government's books from past acquisitions. So there's a lot there to actually work with already without changing legislation.
My one worry, though, Warwick, is that a whole lot of those topics that you just mentioned are things that we have spoken about before, that the same President Cyril Ramaphosa has spoken about before pretty recently. And yet he has to continuously reiterate that, and those continue to be the issues at hand. It doesn't seem like we're actually gathering momentum and trying to fix them.
Well, I think sometimes when you have to speak in a noisy church, you have to have a few goes at the microphone to get the message across. And I think that is his problem.
Yeah. So So you think that perhaps at least this time we see some growth, we see some change, some resonance?
Well, I think the key issue is actually going to be implementation.
Yeah.
And that is really where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
It's either a result or not. But I think what was important in looking at the actual promise list is that for the first time in a very long time, we had a list of undertakings that actually were realistic, that you could have a shot at achieving, as
Sure.
opposed to being a wish list that was trotted out to make the citizens feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
He has a chance of actually achieving those targets that were set out there.
Warwick, always great chatting to you. Thank you so much for the time. Warwick Lucas from Galileo Capital, they're helping us unpack the market picture. Of course, sharing his thoughts as well on President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address from last night.